Once again, a big winter storm is hitting the upper Midwest, and it's bringing extremely cold temperatures with it.
So why does this year's winter seem so long if we're facing global warming? The answer is science shows that the globe hasn't been warming in recent years. Gary Lane has the story.
The calendar may say it's spring, but a major winter-like snowstorm is wreaking havoc on the lives of Americans from the Rockies to the Upper Plains. 13 states are either under a storm watch or warning. 9 inches of snow fell on Denver, while Nebraska and the Dakotas expected as much as 2 feet. Powerful winds ripped the roof off this Harley-Davidson store in Pueblo, Colorado, and derailed a train off its tracks in Nebraska. Thick ice was the problem in Sioux Falls, causing many trees to fall on houses.
I thought I heard a very large thunderclap, so I thought I better go out there and see what's going on. And my reaction was, oh my God.
The tree that crashed into the roof of the Imker house also damaged their car. While the Imkers and their neighbors clean up, some scientists are wondering what's happening with the weather. Are we really experiencing global warming? While greenhouse gases have soared in the past 15 years, air temperatures at the Earth's surface have not. According to The Economist magazine, 100 billion tons of carbon were added to the atmosphere during the period 2000 to 2010. That's 1/4 of all man-created CO2s put there since 1750. A NASA scientist reports the 5-year mean global temperature has remained flat for the past decade. While some believe those statistics prove man-made climate change isn't as bad as previously feared, The Economist magazine still says global warming is happening, but skeptics remain unconvinced, including perhaps some of the Americans who are digging out from this week's spring snowstorm. Gary Lane, CBN News.
I don't know if I'm a skeptic about climate change. I'll tell you, the weather just seems to be absolutely wacky over the last 10 years with major hurricanes, major storms, major typhoons, hurricanes. It just doesn't seem to stop, and now we're getting a whole series of winter storms right in the middle of April. Well, if it's not some kind of strange thing, Terry, you got an explanation for it? Yeah.
I don't. You know, I'm not a scientist. I don't understand all of the arguments on the whole global warming thing. People seem to latch on to that without having done much research on it. But it'd be interesting to get both sides in an everyday man's language, for why some say yes, why some say no.
And a calm, reasoned debate,
yes,
as opposed to a shrill name calling.
Political, yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see. And if alternative energy is the answer to calm down our weather, I'm all for it. Well, a court case about a brutal assault in Israel has turned into a remarkable story of forgiveness. Lee Webb has that news story from the CBN Newsroom. Lee?
Gordon, 5 years ago, a young Israeli boy almost died in a series of attacks that attracted worldwide attention. On Tuesday, an Israeli court sentenced American-born Jack Teitel for his role in those attacks. But an amazing part of the story deals with the forgiving spirit of the boy's parents.
Jack Teitel walked into the Jerusalem courtroom unrepentant. He said he had no regrets. The judge responded with 2 life sentences in 2 murder cases and an additional 30 years for other crimes.
We hope that this heavy punishment will deter any others who may think of doing any kind of terror activities or participating in such.
Teitel's reign of terror included killing 2 Arabs and sending a bomb to the house of Messianic pastors David and Leah Ortiz. The explosion nearly killed then 15-year-old Ami Ortiz. Miraculously, he survived. At one point, Teitel claimed he did God's will, but during sentencing, the judge said his holy work had become dust under his feet and that his actions contradicted the values of the Jewish state. Part of his mission included eradicating Jews who believe Jesus is the Jewish Messiah from Israel. Ironically, his actions spread the news of those Messianic Jews throughout the country.
The Lord has, in His mercy, has chosen us to suffer for His name's sake, that His name should be lifted up, because that's the only thing we can take with us, only Jesus.
Leah Ortiz says from the very beginning, God told her to pray for the man who tried to kill her son.
He gave me his love for Jack Teitel. I didn't know who Jack Teitel was, but he gave me the love of God and told me to pray for the person that did this and to pray for his salvation.
Have you and David and Ami and the family forgiven Jack?
All of us had to from the very beginning. Otherwise, we would have been prisoners along with him. We would have been destroyed. We wouldn't have been able to receive any kind of healing in our lives whatsoever.
Yet they credit the prayers of believers from around the world.
It was their prayers that were able to lift us up and keep us afloat. Without the prayers, we wouldn't be able to do it.
I have never known the Lord as Emmanuel as I have through this situation. He has stayed so close to us. We have experienced the body of Christ around the world in a way that is unbelievable.
David and Leah Ortiz express relief at the verdict, grateful title cannot harm other families, and hope one day to visit him in jail to share God's love. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Virginia Congressman Frank Wolf is calling on President Obama to speak up for Egypt's persecuted Christians. Wolf says the president should be forceful in denouncing attacks on Coptic believers at their main cathedral in Cairo last weekend. An angry mob threw firebombs and rocks at Christians outside the cathedral Sunday, leaving 2 Christians dead. Wolf says attacks on Christians will continue there unless Mr. Obama speaks out. He says Christians in Egypt are living in fear, and many are simply fleeing the country. Egypt's Coptic Pope has accused President Mohamed Morsi of negligence. Pope Tadros says Morsi has broken his promise to protect the country's Christians. The president submits his budget today, more than 2 months late. Already some lawmakers are criticizing it because it calls for spending even more taxpayer dollars, when a new report shows once again how much is already being wasted. Jennifer Wishon explains.
The president's political allies and enemies now have something in common. They're not fans of his 2014 budget. White House officials say it's proof of Mr. Obama's willingness to compromise with Congress.
We need to grow the economy and create jobs. That's the #1 objective.
To get that done, the president's spending plan pushes money into projects like building roads and bridges, scientific research, and education. The White House says the budget also cuts the deficit by nearly $2 trillion over the next 10 years.
The president's budget will replace the sequester, which was designed to be bad policy for everyone, with not just $1.2 trillion in deficit reduction, but $1.8 trillion in deficit reduction. In other words, it will go further than the sequester.
Conservatives are skeptical of that claim, but in a nod to Republicans, the administration also says the budget includes cuts to entitlement programs like Social Security and Medicare. It also includes tax hikes.
There will be revenue achieved through tax reform, closing of loopholes, and capping of deductions. That go to the well-off and well-connected.
Well-connected or not, for some lawmakers, it's hard to take any spending plan and certainly tax increases seriously when so many tax dollars, tens of billions of them, are being wasted on bureaucratic inefficiencies. For example, on Medicaid alone, the government wastes billions of dollars a year by simply paying too much for services. And since 2002, the Department of Defense has gone from having 2 camouflage uniforms to 7. That costs tens of millions more and also makes it more difficult for service members to identify one another in combat. It's one of dozens of recommendations offered by the Government Accountability Office to cut back government waste. Another example, the office found that last year there were 700 government initiatives to do the same thing. Promote renewable energy.
The hardworking American taxpayers have a hard enough time paying for something once, but paying for it twice is really a problem.
But until Congress and the president act to cut that waste, taxpayers will keep right on paying for it. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Gordon, back to you.
Well, once again, a call to pray and specifically pray for our president, pray for our leaders in the Senate, leaders in Congress, that they would have wisdom and they would have discernment and they would know how to solve the major problems that are facing this nation, whether it's the economy, unemployment, record spending, record deficits. We need wisdom for practical solutions.
South Korea's defense ministry says North Korea could fire a missile any day. U.S. officials agree that a missile is fueled and ready for launch, but the target unknown. The Pentagon says, though, it is ready to shoot down a missile if necessary.
Would you recommend such action?
If the missile was in defense of the homeland, I would certainly recommend that action. And if it was defense of our allies, I would recommend that action.
The South Korean government is on high alert, a threat level just short of war. It says that Kim Jong-un is blustering, but military officials say that the young leader is much more unpredictable than his father or grandfather. Some California lawmakers are trying to remove tax exemptions from the Boy Scouts because of its ban on gays. Democrat State Senator Ricardo Lara introduced the measure. The legislation would deny tax-exempt status to the Scouts and other nonprofit youth groups that discriminate on the basis of identity, race, sexual orientation, nationality, or religion. If passed, the Boy Scouts would have to pay corporate taxes on donations and income from fees. That bill is set for an initial committee hearing in California today. We will keep you posted. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.